Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temy. Temy is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. And each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry, and today we're lucky enough to be joined by a remarkable guest, Anthony Collias, CCO and co-founder at Stasher. Hello, Anthony. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Perfect, not too bad. Summer's ending, it looks like. We had a lovely couple of days and it's back to doom and gloom. So moving away from that, let's talk about you. What more exciting things can we talk about? So tell me a little bit about yourself and the company that you currently work at.
Yeah. Okay. When you say tell me about yourself, you want to hear professional, personal?
Oh, tell us what you think will be interesting. You can choose.
Okay, go on. I'll do a little broad. I'll go a little personal to start. I'm based in the UK, based in London, but I moved around a bunch as a kid and I lived all over. We were saying just before we started recording, my dad's Greek originally, my mom's Bulgarian. I personally lived in Istanbul, Holland, and way back when I lived in Dubai for a little bit as well. But we're talking before it was kind of influencers and yeah,
Back in
shady.
the old days, right?
Yeah, but like back when it was really just expats working for whatever big companies. I finished school here in the UK, went to uni here, and actually met my co-founder studying. So he did economics and management. I did politics, philosophy, and economics, both at Oxford. And we shared a corridor and basically did most of our economics modules together, became good friends, and kept studied together, knew we worked well together. He was doing a master's at UCL. I had done an internship in investment banking. Funny story. I actually almost did a internship with not Monzo, but the founders of Monzo had started another company. They came and did a talk at Oxford. I went, saw them afterwards, and I was like, "Oh God, I love what you're doing. I'd love to intern with you guys." They were like, "Yeah, sure, come join us." And I got another internship offer to do investment banking, and I was like, "You're supposed to do finance, right?" So I ended up doing that, which in retrospect was a terrible mistake. Obviously, it would have been much better to have had a close personal relationship with the future founders of Monzo, but whatever. And yeah, knew that I hated corporate finance life, knew I wanted to start something. So my co-founder who was doing that master's at UCL, they had an entrepreneurship program and we're like, we need an idea to put through it. My brother was living in central London and I was living with him. And he was studying at City Uni in London and always had people asking to leave stuff. And Jake was asking to leave stuff one time and I was like, we'll do this. We'll make a website for this and we'll put it through the startup program. And that's how we started Stasher.
It seems like probably entrepreneurialism wasn't like in your blood. Was it something that you chose to do, or was it something that you kind of just happened across?
Oh, I've given thought to this before. So two or three things. Like one, my like looking at my parents, they were relatively entrepreneurial, so I saw that. I say relatively because neither of them strictly like founded companies, but
Mm.
my dad was a partner in his company, and he and a few others had done a management buyout at some point of a company. And one thing that I had come to understand from that was that, yeah, not that it's the only goal, but like in terms of financial success, ownership is important. And then the other thing was that I knew, and likewise, my mom was working as a interpreter and tour guide, and so she would work kind of on her own terms. And then the other thing was that like I was just a bit of a kind of belligerent, kind of arrogant kid who, like when I did the internship in investment banking, I was like, I don't want, I like, I was like, I didn't get into Oxford to like nudge around PowerPoints. And it's also like, what I was working in for that summer was M&A, right? Which sounds cool, but yeah, it's really nudging around PowerPoints and doing a bit of research or whatever. And I think, yeah, part of the problem really was just that it sounds crazy to say this. Like the money that they were talking about was good, but it wasn't like the 80s, 90s. It wasn't like retire when you're 30.
Yeah, not like
And I
filthy
was,
rich, just like
yeah, and it
regular
was,
rich.
well, I know which sounds sad, but I was like, for the amount of work that you had to do, I was like, woof, like there must be like better ways to live, and there's too much stuff I care about, like doing work that I think is interesting, but also that I believe is contributing actual value, like um, you know, personal choices, like I want to be able to go to the gym in the morning and not not be told off for being late. Like I want to, be able to eat well and see my friends and stuff. Like especially if I'm going to be doing work that I don't find very meaningful.
Yeah.
It's another thing if you're distracted because you're doing stuff that you care about. So yeah, for a number of reasons, that it just did not feel like an acceptable path, and I looked around, and for the personality type I had, I kind of honed in on like it was like academics or working for yourself, and I didn't think I was smart enough to be a serious academic. So
So, so you process of elimination to find out what it was you were going to do.
exactly.
So you were talking to me about your work-life balance and how that was important to you when you were like
Mm,
younger.
mm.
Do you still have that same philosophy now?
I mean, work-life balance. I'm not saying the kind of like 4-hour work week, like that means not working. That means working as little as possible. It just means more like no stupid made up rules. So like, you know, if I'm working hard all day, does it actually matter if I want to wake up a little later and go to the gym 10 to 11? If I don't have any commitments in that time and I still am working hard and I'm just working at different hours in the day? Like,
Yeah.
so flexibility. Um, and yeah, I guess the other thing is like there's this union between purpose and work where like it doesn't feel like work if sometimes you have, especially as a founder, right, if you're interested in what you're doing, you have free time and you'll be like, I could watch Netflix, or I'm interested, I'll look into this thing that I didn't have time to do earlier or whatever, and that doesn't feel like work, right, when you get to do it on those terms. And then the other thing, actually talking about made up rules, is that we run a hybrid company, right, which means we were talking just before we started the recording. I get to travel a lot, because personally I like to be in the office and be with people when I'm here, but then I also like to very often not be here. I like to be in warmer places or catch up with members of the team in the other parts of the world, or um, you know, we have to go and see my partner's family, or I want to go and see my family, who kind of are splitting their time between London and Greece. Like it's just all these things where it's like you realize like you're like, oh well, how could we start work after 9 a.m., and you realize that that's such a made up rule. Who cares about that? Or like, people are like, oh well, you have to be together in the office or else you're not working. And again, it's like, does that actually matter? Like, if anything, actually, I enjoy being in the office, but sometimes it's kind of distracting because we chat, and actually, if I want to do deep focus work, sometimes it's better to not come in.
It's always nice to meet a fellow questioner of authority and pointless rules. So I'm very much
Mm,
with you on that. So actually, I can see a lot of the influence from travel. So I can see where Stasher would be something that you would naturally drive to. But could you
mm.
just walk us a little bit through the journey into entrepreneurialism in relation to Stasher? Because the travel I get, what was it that pushed you to do towards this particular function?
As in specifically
Like
a
suitcases,
marketplace?
like what was it? Was it the inconvenience of travel? What was it that you were thinking? Oh, this is an area that needs to be changed.
No, it honestly, it was much less romantic than any of that. Like like I was saying, there was this program we wanted to go through, and I had started, basically what we would do is I said I was living with my brother, right? So we had 2 bedrooms. And what we would do is we'd put my bedroom up on Airbnb, and then when someone would stay, I would stay in the living room and we would split the money. I loved that model. And this was also long enough ago that it was like Airbnb felt a little bit magical, and it felt like a way to connect with people because we'd hang out with and chat with the people we were hosting. You can imagine, like,
Yeah.
I was like 20, my brother was like 22, 23. We would put on the listing like this is staying in a student flat, and the right kind of people would opt to choose to stay there, right? The other thing about that, aside from what I liked about that, but and that get me interested in travel and seeing people, don't always leave their stuff. But like the other thing was, looking at the business model, I was like, this is amazing. They have no inventory of their own, but they can sell all the inventory in the world, which for a couple young people, it was like, that's the perfect business model to work on because we don't have capital and no one trusts us enough to give us capital. So if we can find a business model where we can just get people to list stuff and then we sell that, that makes a lot of sense. So the original idea, like I said, was kind of more general, like put up people's spaces and anyone can rent it for anything. And so we'd started because it was easiest with people's homes, right? And it was really through trial and error, and to be honest, to some extent, coincidence, that we kind of started to hone in on the travel use case. It was like we put it up and we're like, hey, use it however you want. And the things that we found were that I happen to live at the time, not anymore. I used to live between Euston and King's Cross, right? Which is two of the biggest train stations in the world. Everyone who was booking it was finding us because they were looking like, ways to store your luggage near King's Cross, don't want to pay £10 for the station facilities,
Yeah.
right? And so it was just kind of like a user nudge. And then when people were coming, leaving stuff in our houses, we were like, okay, this is cool, but no one else is ever going to do this in their house. It doesn't make enough money. It doesn't make sense. And we're like, but the shop across the street, it's a small independent business. I know the people. Why don't I just sign them up? And then they could do it, and they're open anyway. And between these kind of like little learnings, it just kind of found its own way to like, okay, so it's not like we were inspired by the business model of Airbnb because that's what we could do because we were young, because we didn't have any capital. And then we're like, okay, the way people are using it is actually for this, like, instead of storing at the train stations. And I also didn't mention there was like a pricing thing where we were like, how we realized everyone wanted to store their stuff for one day. We're like, how do we price something for one day when, you can charge £5 for that, but you could also charge £5 per box per month. And that's when we kind of realized they're both storage, but they're very different use cases and they have different needs. And it just made more sense to work with businesses as hosts and on and on. And we just kind of found our way there from how users were using it, as opposed to because we necessarily love travel. It wasn't originally intended to be necessarily a travel business. It was intended to be a marketplace for storage.
Sometimes that's how the best things happen, isn't it? When you go down one path and you end up taking another. So it's actually really useful for something like that. So I can't believe someone hasn't done it sooner, but that's why you come in. Just talk about the early stages of the company, like when you were building Stasher, like what was the hardest part of getting the first users and partners on board? Are you a salesman? Are you good? Are you gift with the gab? Can you like talk your way into a sale?
I'm an okay salesman, yeah. So like I'm comfortable with that. But I would say really for us, I mean, this is loosely connected, but product was difficult. So neither me nor my co-founder were software engineers, which in retrospect, like I probably should have what I should have done is taken a year or two, learn about that and then started a company. But whatever, it didn't end up too bad. But it definitely slowed us down a bit. And things are different now because of all these AI tools. If we were doing it now, we would have used Cursor or whatever and learned along the way. Initial sales as well. On the customer side, very fortunately, I had been working at like an online marketing agency, so like PPC, paid search. It was kind of like to the man with a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
Well, it just so happened that this actually was a nail, and I happened to have a hammer. It was like, it still is one of our main channels. It was the perfect channel for this, and it was like the naughties in that like no one else was advertising it. So it was very, very, very cheap for us to advertise on Luggage Storage King's Cross, Luggage Storage London. So that was relatively easy. Signing up the hosts was harder, but it was just grind. We would spend a lot of time walking around London and then other UK cities, and then building teams of people going around other places, and then starting to do more kind of like corporate level outreach, like talking to hotel groups and stuff like that. And it was just, knocking on a lot of doors, literally and metaphorically, or a metaphor for digitally.
Yeah. So I love the success stories, but I also like to hear about some of the hardships. Was there ever a time during your career and you just thought, "Oh, I'm done. I'm just going to walk away"? Or do you know?
Oh man,
do you never have those moments?
No. 100%. You'd be very, very, very lucky to not have those moments, and I'm not that lucky. I started a travel business that went through COVID, so not that lucky. Man, I would say two or three things. So one, we had a co-founder breakup early on, so we had a third person, and it just didn't work out. And it was kind of classic, like I said, we started it as like a uni accelerator program thing. We had a friend who was just kind of there, and it was like, well, when you're doing a project, it feels stupid to exclude someone. If we'd really thought like, hey, is this a good person either for this project or for this team, we probably would have realized the answer is no. But at the time, it just felt like we're just working on a project, and we're all of the mindset of like, hey, if it goes well, nice, and if not, we learn something for a year, right? But that was, extricating them was painful. So that was a time genuinely, thinking to the extent of like times of like, should I just give up? That's one. Another one, which is kind of like, it's not even like a specific time. It's like 2 or 3 times. Like, I'd mentioned that like search and paid search is an important channel for us, right? That means, Google search is important for us, and, your entire business being at the whim of a black box algorithm that decides what people get to see on the internet is obviously incredibly stressful.
Mm.
You know, at least 2 or 3 times, like Google does an update and it just doesn't like your website anymore. How? Some technical issue happens, whether that's like, I remember we had like some really niche ones where it was like, we stopped supporting a really old version of Internet Explorer, which it turned out was the version that the Google crawler bot used to view your page. So suddenly we were disappearing from Google. And like this was a really small part of a release. So like it took ages to work out that was why. So again, crashing off Google. 1 or 2 times we're like, your tracking fucks up. And then that has the double impact of like, it can impact your ranking on Google, and then one of your major channels, paid search, doesn't work because the whole thing relies on feedback loop with how things are performing. So yeah, a number of times with that. And then the third one, obviously, is COVID, where
That's been like either really good for companies or awful, and you unfortunately were on the other side.
yeah, well, actually, in a funny way, I mean, yes, it was awful, but on the scale of awful,
Yeah.
it was, look, if you were running a chain of 5 coffee shops, it was probably worse for you than it was for us, right? For us, it was like, it was a huge loss of time. So the company has actually technically existed for 10 years, right? But the first year or two, like I said, it was kind of like a student project. We weren't working on it full time. We'd raised money, blah, blah, blah. And 3 or 4 years disappeared into the black hole of COVID. So it really doesn't feel like a 10-year-old company. It feels like a 4 or 5-year-old company.
Yeah.
But yeah, the COVID, it was also just being a travel business, but being low capex and being on the line. Okay, everyone gets chucked on furlough. And it was a weird one because like we knew fundamentally, I guess it was a bit like running an airline after 9/11, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of too young to have really lived through that, but like I imagine like if you're running an airline post 9/11, you'd have to be pretty alarmist to start to think like no one's ever going to fly again, right?
Yeah.
You probably at some level know like, okay, things might change, but things are going to normalize, and clearly people want this product. So, there's going to be a hit, but like product market fit will return, normality will return. It happens in COVID that like, it's hard to remember this, but like it feels obvious looking back, but at the time, the sense was constantly 2 or 3 months and then things would be normal. 2 or 3 months and then things would be normal. There's some things we would have done differently, but yeah, overall it really sucked, and it doubly sucked that like honestly the roller coaster of it was like, like you said,
I feel like I'm living this roller coaster with you just as you speak.
Just speaking, yeah, man, I feel tired thinking about it. But it's like the worst thing was that like you're going through this, and then other people suddenly are like doing amazingly, and it's like, man.
Yeah, that sounds like my life when I get up in the morning and I see all these things. I think, oh my God, why me? What did I do? Do you have those moments?
Yeah, but you just need to stick around because you get your hits and you get your lifts. Like that's
So what is it? So,
it evens out.
Obviously, you're getting these punches, punch after punch after punch. Why don't you just go down? What made you keep getting back up? Is it something in you?
It was honestly one of those things as well. It's not like an in me like, oh, I'm special or I'm motivated or anything like that. It's like you're asking like, why did you start a company? Like honestly, I don't have anything better to do. Like I don't know what else I would do. And it just constantly it was an evaluation of like, with a ridiculously optimistic mindset of where your company can go, which you have to be stupidly optimistic, just being like, nah, I think that this is the better path constantly. Which is why like actually like if you like corporate jobs and stuff, you're kind of, and then you're like, oh, but I also maybe I want to do my own thing. You're kind of doomed because things will get tough. And if you feel like you have other options, at some point it's going to make more sense to take another option. Like it's a path that only makes sense if you deeply feel like you have nothing else you could be doing. And I don't mean that in like a super positive, like, I love this, there's nothing else I could do. I mean that in like there is nothing else I would rather, there's nothing else that makes sense for me to do.
You've got that very British like spirit about you, with like, oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
what else can I do? That's living in this country too long.
Yes, no, I'm sorry. I'm because you're asking me about negative stuff. I'm sounding overly negative. I mean, it's also like I say, part of it is because you have this wildly optimistic idea of how well you think things can go here. Like, yeah, like in reality, probably risk adjusted, I probably could have made more money if I'd gone into finance.
Yeah.
And I probably could have found a path that like I didn't hate that much. Like not all of it's like M&A, but like no, like I like what I do. It gives me a great sense of meaning. I love the flexibility and control. I love building a team. Like, yeah.
Because you've actually been really successful. I mean, it might sound like I think you're being very
I don't
modest and humble about your achievements, but you've actually won a lot of awards. You've got like your own podcast channel. You've got lots of different things to be excited about. So, since we're talking about some good points, tell us a little bit about your podcast. Just let's
Okay.
flog it.
So we mentioned we had a lot of free time during COVID. So two key projects that we ended up kind of setting up were one, we set up a podcast where it was about everyday philosophy called The Morality of Everyday Things. The easiest thing is just to kind of look it up. Like we just talk about everyday philosophy things. We've interviewed some really interesting professors and stuff, but generally it's just me and my co-founder chatting. And then the other one is that we set up a social enterprise. It's called Tree Points.
Yeah.
And that kind of pivoted around a little bit, but ultimately now it's an API for tree planting. So we source great projects, then we buy them in large bulk to get the best prices possible, and then we provide an API that people can integrate and a Shopify app. So if people run e-commerce stores, they can add this, they can add tree planting. You get like the first 50 or 100 trees free to try it out. It actually improves the conversion rate. And then you also can do it now that you can add a tick box so that you don't subsidize a tree per basket necessarily. You can subsidize either for all these specific products so that you have a high enough margin on those, or that it's a tick box in the checkout so people add the cost to their cart.
It's so interesting. You've got all these different things going on. Are you looking to do like a fourth thing, or are you quite content with just juggling three things at the moment?
The podcast we've basically not posted in a long time because we've been too busy. And Tree Points we put some time into, but we also have a kind of third co-founder now, or like a late joining co-founder who helps take a lot of the load off. We're basically mostly focused on Stasher because it's become super busy.
Yeah. So if someone's like listening to you now and thinking, oh, I'm kind of interested in what Stasher is, can you give me a little bit of a quick sell? And then just tell me like one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about like sharing economy services, for lack of a better word.
Okay, well, I mean, the simplest way to describe what we do is kind of like an Airbnb or Uber style app for luggage storage. So you can imagine the interface. You go on, you see a map, you see all of the hotels and businesses around who can keep your stuff for you. You book, you can go and leave your stuff. It's all fully covered. And you can see when the place will be open, et cetera, et cetera. I guess that's the simplest way. So when you're kicked out of your Airbnb, you can book to leave your stuff at like a nearby shop or hotel.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure we've all had those moments when we needed somewhere to put something and it just wasn't available. So now we have the option thanks to your service. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So misconceptions about sharing economy. This I don't know where to go with.
So I think like if I think about from my perspective, I've never done it because I'm very attached like from a security perspective. So does it mean that it isn't secure? What's your thoughts on that? So if I go there, am I going to think like, oh, is it high risk that it's going to be damaged or is it going to be lost? Like what would you say to perhaps those two?
Yeah, I mean we've stored millions of bags, and the number of cases in general, cases not being the number of bags, sorry, cases and issues is going to be like double digits, and the number of serious cases, so I'm including like slight damage to the bag, like something gets spilled on the bag, stuff like that, it's going to be double digits out of millions. And the number of serious cases, so like bag gets stolen, things like that, we're talking, I dare say single digits, but if not single digits, very low.
It's very competitive with other forms of the industry, yes.
Yeah, it's honestly like it's funny, yeah, like it's really not that hard to mess up, right? Like you keep in a bag, you put
There's
it in
a lot of
bag.
times in my life where I thought that, and that turned out not to be the case.
yeah, it would take some like proper conspiracy. Basically, if someone wants to steal your stuff, there are easier ways to steal it.
It takes some next level incompetence, right, for that to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now we are coming towards the end, unfortunately, and I could talk you for much longer, but unfortunately, time is against us. One piece of advice that you would give to someone, like a bright founder who wants to start their own company or is thinking about starting their own company, from your perspective, what would be the best piece of advice you could give them?
Oh, just do stuff. Like, so many people want to talk to people, they want to get advice, they want to think about things. Like, you just do stuff and you'll work it out by doing. Case in point, right? Like I had said earlier, maybe I should have been a software engineer for a couple of years or whatever. Actually, that's not the right answer. I should have just worked on it as part of what I was doing, and I would have worked it out as I went. It made sense for me to work on things other than being a software developer here at Stasher. But yeah, just do stuff and you will work it out by doing it. And also, I mean, particularly in the UK, the environment is quite forgiving. Like, I have people who are like, what about my terms and conditions or how I sort the taxes or whatever? And it's like, dude, worry about making any money and having any customers before you worry too much about having the perfect, especially now with ChatGPT, like you can do template, you can get advice on this stuff. Like, think less, do more. You'll work it out by doing.
Perfect. What a great way to end the session on. Thank you very much for that advice. Listen, I just want to thank you, Ant, for coming along today. I really appreciate you taking time every day to speak with us.
Hey man, enjoy chatting. No problem. Cheers.
That was Anthony Collias, CCO and co-founder at Stasher. Also, don't forget the podcast, The Morality of Everyday Things, and CEO and co-founder of 3 Points.